Performance review season. 3 words that make most managers quietly dread the next few weeks. Not because they don't care about their people, they do, but because turning a year's worth of scattered observations into 8 coherent, professional, useful documents is a grind. Today, we're going to show you what happens when AI takes on the heavy lifting. Here's the reality for most managers. The notes exist, somewhere in a running doc, a notebook, a string of emails you just sent to yourself at 11 p.m. after a client call. The observations are real and honest. The problem is that pulling them into something you'd actually hand to an employee, something structured, fair, and specific enough to be useful, takes hours you don't have during an already busy stretch of the year. That's not a discipline problem. That's a process problem. The task isn't hard because managers don't know their people. It's hard because converting informal observations into formal documentation is its own skill. And doing it 8 times in a row is exhausting. That's exactly the kind of problem AI is built to solve. Let's put a number on it. For a managing partner running a small accounting firm, 8 employees reviewed twice a year works out to somewhere between 32 and 64 hours spent on review documentation alone per year. That's not a rounding error. That's nearly 2 full work weeks tied up in a task that doesn't require 2 work weeks of human creativity. What it requires is structure, consistency, and clear professional language applied to observations you already have. That's not a creativity problem, that's a conversation problem. And the conversation is exactly what AI does well. Here's the part nobody talks about openly. The first review you write is usually the best one. You're fresh, you're thorough, you pull specific examples, you think carefully about the development plan. By employee 6, 7, and 8, the energy is gone. You're writing good team player, keep it up, and calling it done. That's what happens when a cognitively demanding task gets repeated too many times in a row without a break. The employee who gets reviewed later in the cycle get a worse document than the ones reviewed first. Not because the manager values them less, but because the process doesn't scale well for human energy. AI doesn't have that problem. The 8th draft gets the same treatment as the first. The reason AI handles this so cleanly comes back to something we covered in Making AI Make Sense. AI excels at pattern work, taking unstructured input and converting it into structured, consistent output. Raw manager notes are unstructured. A professional performance review is highly structured, with predictable sections, consistent tone, and specific language conventions. That gap between informal observation and formal documentation is exactly where AI operates best. You're not asking AI to judge your employees or form an opinion about their performance. You already did that. You're asking it to take what you already know and put it into a format that's actually useful and professional. That's a pattern conversation task, and AI is very good at it. So let's take a look at a scenario. Harrington and Associates is a 12-person accounting firm. Managing partner David reviews 8 staff members twice a year. He keeps notes throughout the year, real observations, honest assessments, things he's noticed in client interactions, during busy season, and in day-to-day team dynamics. The notes are good. The problem is turning them into 8 complete professional documents without losing a weekend to the process. This is what David's notes for Abby look like going into the prompt. And I want to be direct about something here. These notes are intentionally simplified for the purpose of this demo. 3 bullet points is a light input, and AI will tell you that too if you ask it. In real life, the more context and detail you feed into the prompt, the better and more specific the output you get back. Detailed observations about particular client situations, specific projects, exact deadlines, all of that produces a significantly stronger draft. The workflow is identical either way. The quality scales with what you put in. Keep that in mind when you build your own version of this. With that being said, even from these 3 bullets, watch what AI produces. The prompt has 4 components. First, you give AI a professional role, expert HR professional, so it activates the right patterns for this type of document and defaults to the right tone and structure. Then you provide the employee's name, title, and firm. Then you paste in your raw notes exactly as they are. No cleanup required, no reformatting. And finally, you specify the 6 sections you want back: performance summary, key achievements, growth areas, impact on team, a 90-day development plan, and a manager recommendation. That's the entire input. The role sets the frame, the notes provide the substance, and the section list tells AI exactly what to build. Everything else comes from the model. Here's what comes back for the first 2 sections. The performance summary takes "great with clients always on time" and turns it into a professional narrative that speaks to reliability, client relationships, and how Abby shows up for the team during high-pressure periods. It's not inflating what David wrote. It's expressing the same observations in language that belongs in a formal document. The key achievements section is where specificity starts to matter. Even from brief notes, AI pulls out a busy season performance and the client feedback and gives Abby something concrete she can point to. If David's notes had included a specific client name, a revenue figure, or a particular filing that went exceptionally well, that detail would show up here. The output is only as specific as the input allows, which is exactly why richer notes produce stronger reviews. And this is where AI earns its keep in performance reviews. Growth areas are the hardest section to write well, and most managers know it. Too blunt and it feels like an attack. Too vague and it means nothing. Too soft and the employee walks away thinking everything is fine when it isn't. AI threads that needle consistently because it's drawing on patterns from thousands of professional HR documents and defaulting to language that is constructive, specific, and forward-looking. Struggles with complex tax filing, needs to ask for help sooner, becomes a specific paragraph about expanding proficiency with multi-entity structures and building the habit of proactive consultation before issues reach the review stage. It says exactly what David's note said, but in a way Abby can actually use them to improve. The team impact section takes good attitude, team player, and gives it real substance, connecting her behavior to the broader culture of the firm during peak season. That's the difference between feedback that lands and feedback that's either stings without being helpful or disappears without registering. The 90-day development plan is what separates a useful review from a forgettable one. Most managers either skip it entirely or write something generic because building a 3-milestone plan for 8 employees is genuinely time-consuming work on top of already time-consuming work. So it gets cut, and the employee walks out of the review with feedback but no clear path forward. AI generates this from the same notes. Days 1 through 30 focus on building foundational skills. Days 30 through 60 on applying them with oversight. Days 60 through 90 on demonstrating readiness for the next level. Each milestone is specific, tied directly back to the growth areas in the previous section, and actionable enough that Abby knows exactly what to do differently starting the next morning. The manager recommendation closes the document cleanly. David doesn't have to find the right words to position Abby's trajectory. He just has to read what AI produced and confirm it's accurate. Here's where David's job actually starts. The draft is complete, but it's not finished yet. One focused read through covers 3 things. Does the tone match your actual relationship with this employee? AI defaults to professional and constructive, but you know whether that calibration is right for this particular person and this particular year. Are the facts accurate? Dates, project names, any specific figures that appear in the draft? And is there anything that happened this year that didn't make it into your notes and needs to be in this document? Add it now. The draft is a starting point, not a final product. But it is a very strong starting point, one that would have taken 3 to 4 hours to build from scratch. There's a clear division of labor here worth naming explicitly. AI handles structure, language, consistency, and completeness. It produces the same quality for every employee, regardless of where they fall in the review cycle. What it cannot do is weigh sensitive interpersonal history that never made it into your notes, assess whether someone is on a performance improvement trajectory, make compensation or promotion decisions, or navigate anything that requires legal judgment or HR sensitivity beyond its training. Those stay with you. AI handles the parts of this task that don't require human judgment so that you can focus entirely on the parts that do. This is the consistency argument, and for a lot of managers, it matters more than the time savings. Employee 1 and Employee 8 get the same depth, the same structure, the same quality of language. Not because David has superhuman endurance, but because AI doesn't experience review fatigue. The process doesn't degrade over 8 iterations. Every employee receives a document they can be proud to receive, and every manager delivers something they can stand behind. That consistency is hard to manufacture manually. With AI, it's the default. The workflow David actually runs looks like this. He gathers his notes, they already exist because he's been keeping them throughout the year. He writes 8 prompts, copy, paste the template, adjust the name and role, paste the notes. Done. 8 drafts come back. He does 1 editorial pass on each, and he's finished. The cognitive shift here is important. He's no longer doing creative writing 8 times in a row. He's doing editorial review 8 times. Those are completely different mental tasks. Editorial review is faster, less draining, and easier to maintain quality on across multiple rounds. That's what makes one afternoon realistic instead of 2 lost weekends. If review quality in your organization varies noticeably depending on when the cycle someone was reviewed, that's your signal. If you're consistently pushing back review season because the time commitment feels unmanageable, that's the signal. If your employees are walking out of reviews with observations but no clear direction on what to actually do differently, that's the signal. The manual version has a ceiling. This workflow doesn't. And the math here is straightforward. 8 reviews at roughly 30 minutes of prompt construction and editorial review instead of 3 to 4 hours of writing from scratch. That's somewhere between 20 and 28 hours returned per review cycle. Twice a year, that's close to a full work week given back to billable client work, business development, or simply not grinding through a weekend in November trying to find the right words for the 8th time. And the quality doesn't drop when the hours do. For most managers, it improves because the draft is always structurally complete, the language is always professional, and the growth areas section doesn't get softened just because it's late and you're tired of writing hard things carefully. There's one thing worth saying clearly. AI writes the document. It does not deliver the review. The conversation with your employee, the relationship, the nuance, the hard feedback delivered with care and context, that's still entirely yours. No workflow changes that, and nothing should. What changes is how prepared you are when you walk into that room. You're not improvising from fragmented notes or hoping you remembered everything important. You have a structured document you're ready to read, verify, and stand behind. That preparation changes the quality of the conversation. And better preparation usually means better outcomes for the employee on the other side of the table. The notes were always there. The observations were always real. David always knew what he thought about Abby's year. He just didn't have the time or the process to turn that knowledge into 8 complete professional documents twice a year without it costing him a significant chunk of his own time and energy. AI closes that gap. Raw notes go in, a structured 6-section review comes out. One read through to confirm accuracy, add missing context, and verify the tone. Done. The workflow doesn't change what a good manager knows about their people. It changes how long it takes to put that knowledge into a form that actually helps someone grow. And that makes it worth running every single time. This is part of the Making AI Work series. Practical workflows showing what AI actually does to tasks that used to take much longer. If you need this running across your whole team or across multiple managers in your organization, let's talk about what that looks like at scale. And don't forget to subscribe for new workflows every week. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.